listening to Intimacy Made Simple, the podcast where we talk about how being deeply known and loved meets the act of sex, so you can have true intimacy and make your marriage strong. I'm Mary Whitman Ortiz, your host, and on today's episode, we're joined by my co-host, Rachel Landin. We are unpacking what does playfulness look like in sexual intimacy. So if you want to have more fun in your relationship, please join us now. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad you're here. And Rachel, I have a fun question for you today.
Okay. What is it?
Why do you think people are so attracted to these things on social media, the Throwback Thursday, the 10-year challenge? I mean, people just can't get enough of that. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One, I think it's very engaging. It's a very engaging question. You know, everybody is going to answer it.
Right.
So you get to kind of like say, hey, look at me. And the other reason I think is because you want to see how much you've grown.
Ah, yeah.
So I definitely think when I see those, I'm like, ooh, let me see where I was 10 years ago. And I actually take a moment to think about where I was 10 years ago or last Thursday or whatever. You know?
Yeah.
I just think it's a moment to reflect, that you actually take the moment to reflect. Am I on the right track? Am I better than I was? Mm-hmm. So that's my answer.
I've seen some wonderful testimonies of people saying, this is where I used to be, but God, and now look where I am, not as in a boasting thing, but just being very, very grateful for everything God's done.
I would say that's my testimony.
Okay. Yeah,
yes. Absolutely.
Me too. And we will find out in just a few minutes how that applies to today's episode.
Okay, so it's my turn to ask you a question.
It's your turn.
All right, so the question I have today is, we're wrapping up the whole God is good, intimacy, and fierce.
Yes.
And today we're going to discuss, what does that T mean?
Right. And what we've pictured this sexual intimacy as a gift to marriage. And we get to unwrap it again and again and again. I know last time we both agreed that practice makes perfect. So somebody wanted to hear that again, especially in regards to sexual intimacy. But the T stands for timeless.
Okay.
Timeless, which is why I wanted to talk about that reflection and going back in time and why are we so attracted to that. And I have two extremes when I look at timeless. I look at very young and I look at old. And aging and being older is better than not aging. Right. You know, a lot of people don't want to age, and I understand that. But those are the parameters here. And how does sexual intimacy play out in regards to that? So first of all, I just want to put this under the umbrella of Hebrews 13:4, which talks about that the marriage bed is undefiled. Mm-hmm. And there's so many ways to look at that, but certainly it is pure, and certainly it is a place where a husband and a wife agree on what happens in the marriage bed, and keep in mind what God says is pure, but then keep in mind how they personally want to connect. So at the very young part of a timeless expression, sexual intimacy is a fabulous place to play.
Okay.
Have a playful attitude.
Yes.
Have a childlike attitude of, let's explore.
Okay.
Oh, have wonder at, what could this be? So it's something it's rejuvenating.
Right. Exciting, fun.
Yes. I didn't say childish.
Right.
And let me demand my way and be selfish, but that expectation and like, I don't know, let's just try it. How it's carefree. It's a place where when there's this trust in the relationship and you can be yourself, then you don't have to be perfect.
Right.
And you can just try something. And it may turn out like you expect. It usually doesn't. Could turn out better. It could turn out to be something that that was a flop. And, but then you laugh about it and you tell stories about it.
So where would you get the idea to do, like, okay, so let's say we decide you want to have fun, let's do something different. Like, do you plan that out, or do you just say, meet me here at, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or I think that's the hard part. It's like, how do you get to the next step? If you've decided you want to add a little more fun into your marriage,
right.
Where are you getting this from?
And there's so many good resources out there. I know there's some questionable resources out there that suggest activities for couples to do. And we'll certainly get a resource list out to our listeners to give some guidance there. But this could be one of those areas where you do plan. And I know with sexual intimacy in particular, I encourage couples to talk outside the bedroom about what you want to try, and then when you're in the bedroom, you're more on the same page. Not saying that you can't just try something new on the spot in the bedroom, but just keeping that playful attitude.
It's really good. Just making it, like saying something like, hey honey, you want to do something, like, just being playful about it. I think that's definitely good.
Absolutely. So that was one end of the spectrum of timelessness or timeless, and then the other end would be the aging and the maturing. So the longevity of your marriage is a beautiful picture of security.
Right.
And in your sexual intimacy, there's going to be so many changes. Your sex life will never stay the same, even if you did everything exactly the same, which, why would you do that?
Right.
But your body, your life, everything changes. And this shows up so much more for women with hormones and pregnancy and childbirth and child rearing and more hormones, and certainly men have hormone issues as well, but you are forever changing, and there needs to be some adapting.
Right.
For yourself, for your spouse. Certainly older couples can't do some of the same positions that they did in previous years, and we don't want to ridicule our spouses if they're not able to do that, if there's joint issues, if there's just other physical sickness. My goodness, I broke my ankle 5 years ago, and let me tell you, there are things you can do with a boot on, and there are things you can't do with a boot on. And so you have to be mindful and extend grace to your spouse. And one other thought on that. Research has shown that women, even as old as 80, can still have an orgasm. Now, the funny thing is, that's been documented, but who's to say that it wasn't beyond age 80? Maybe the older woman just didn't come forward for that study. So there are benefits. Right. A lot of women, when they get past the child birthing years, when menopause hits, they have more freedom, because then they're not worried.
Right.
Oh no, we might get pregnant, which is a very real thing for a lot of couples to work through. So you have the playfulness all the way up to, we are going to adapt and adjust to one another, because you have your entire married life to grow and explore.
Right. I think the security of that is really what I'm hearing.
Yes.
It's that you're understanding that this is my husband, this is my wife for the rest of my life. I just think that sometimes what we're told in the outside world, or people who've been in marriages and been divorced, that's where it's difficult, because it's like, if divorce is not an option. And I think that's what marriage should be. But I think that's what keeps people sometimes, like, maybe from being so vulnerable. So,
right.
If there is issues, if there are things, they're not releasing everything to their spouse, and not growing, not getting deeper. But I think when you start to pay attention to these issues, and you start to pay attention to the things that are important, maybe more the positive than the negative, then you're gonna be better. So in that, why would you say that couples, stop having fun together?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you say that they don't implement that into their marriage?
We've made this comment before about getting into those adulting years with the responsibility, so that they might not prioritize it because there's so many other things going on. I do think certainly the American culture is driven, and fun doesn't seem productive.
Right.
So how could we possibly make time for fun? I remember hearing a story when one of the major fires took place in California, and there was a church that was involved with so much restoration going on. And one of the leaders actually went fishing a few times during those 6 to 12 weeks when the recovery was so intense, because he said, I need fun. I've got to refuel so I can give back. And give out again. So I think that we need to reprioritize fun as an individual, but then also with your spouse. Can you create new hobbies to do together?
That is so good. And not feeling guilty about it. Because I feel that that's kind of, if I think about my own reasons, it would be because I feel like there's so many other things that need to be done.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to spend the money on that because I'd rather put it towards something that we're looking forward to 5 years down the road. It's like I to go to dinner could be $100.
Oh, right.
To go, then if you have to pay babysitters, you're even more money in. I said something to my husband tonight because I posted something on Facebook about women don't want chocolate, we want crab legs.
I saw that.
And he's like, did you really mean that? So we're discussing that, and I said, really, I don't care. I just was trying to make it funny and have people, talk about it. But I'm like, crab legs would be nice. And then I said something about, he said he wants to go places cold. I don't want that.
Yeah.
But I said a hot tub, and he's like, you think about what it would cost to go to a hotel for a weekend. We could save our money for 3 weekends and buy our own hot tub and go whenever we want. So it's like I think that's why for us it's a struggle, because we're always thinking about spending that money somewhere else, and then we never do the actual thing. And it's just weeks and weeks and weeks go by, and before you know it, we feel like we love each other, we have a great relationship, but to actually take that time and make it happen, there's kind of like a guilt feeling. And I would say for me, that's why.
I was going to say, you've got some homework then.
I know. Oh, Lord. I'll add it to the topic.
And I know I've mentioned before about my husband, Tim, and I jet ski together.
Yes.
I actually introduced him to it. So, and now, my gosh, the man is a fan and has all of the gear to go with so many different swimsuits. And it's fun. But it is fun. And his personality type prioritizes fun.
That's good.
It was a learning curve for me.
That's good.
Now I appreciate it.
That's really good. So I'll need some more off-air lessons on how to prioritize fun. But so are we on to the next question?
We are. We are.
What do couples need to do to help with body shaming issues? What would you say?
So we were talking about the fun, because that's the playfulness and the youthful side of the timeless spectrum. And then body issues comes up as people age, typically. And my body's not what it was when I was 18, that kind of thing.
Definitely not.
And how can we encourage ourselves? How can we encourage our spouse at that point? And there is an activity that I love to prompt people with, is to stand in front of the mirror naked and take a picture, a mental picture, and then just realize that each part of your body has served you well, and thank your body. Thank you, feet. I know that you're not quite as streamlined as you once were, but you have carried me through step after step, and I appreciate that. And your legs, and really, you want to tell your body that you appreciate it. And God, thank you, God, for making my body like it is, because it has served me well. Even for women looking at stretch marks after pregnancy, all kinds of things, just knowing that you're a whole person, and certainly in regards to sexual intimacy, which we say so many times, that this is not just a physical act.
Right.
Your emotions are involved. Your spirit is involved. And so what you see in your flesh isn't the total measurement of what's going to be engaging sexually. And one last thought here is that typically husbands don't care what your body looks like.
It's hard to believe.
They love you.
Yes.
They just love you and appreciate you and treasure you and want to be with you and celebrate who you are. So we need to be meditating on that some.
So I would say in that it's more focusing on the good and the positive.
Yes.
And pointing out the negatives. My husband would say to me sometimes, like, I'm not the best cook. So if I cook something, I always serve it with the negatives. Like, it might be a little burnt. And he's like, you're selling it. You're selling it. And he cracks me up with that because I realize, it's a way to protect yourself from being hurt or rejected. And I think that's kind of what women do with their bodies is they make sure you're aware of the negatives so that if somebody else makes them aware, it doesn't hurt as bad. I think that's kind of what the thought process is.
I'm like, that's logical, right?
Right. But what you're saying, I feel, is that's not going to benefit you in any way. The way to benefit yourself is to be appreciative of what your body has done for you. That, you can look at yourself, and it doesn't mean you can't work on some of those things and maybe accommodate. If you are self-conscious, let's turn the lights off, turn some candles on, because it makes you feel uncomfortable. You can't give yourself hold to your spouse. And I think, but knowing that if you come at it with a better attitude, then you might be able to work on it more because you're being positive, versus if you're so negative and hard against yourself, I think it just takes you down. It's an avenue for the enemy to tear you up.
Yes. And when you're appreciating and loving your body and thanking God, you are partnered with everything good that God has designed for you in your body. And when you partner with God, you're much more successful.
Right.
So that heaven coming to earth through your thoughts, through your gaze, through what you're meditating on, will bring changes. It will be life-changing. You're choosing to see yourself the way God sees you, physically as well as emotionally.
Right. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. Anything else we want to talk about today?
I think people have some homework. So take this to heart. If there are ways you need to be more playful and fun, get that list going. If there are ways that you need to be more loving towards how you see your body, that's a great place to put a focus too.
That is. It's all been good. Yeah. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, for sure.
Have a good evening or a day, wherever we're at in this. Bye.
We're so glad you joined us today. But what would make it better is if we hear from you. Do you have a question about intimacy you'd like to have answered? Here's how you can do it. Go to limitlessintimacy.com, find the podcast page, and there's a place for you to record and share your question. Now make sure you stay tuned because we might answer your question soon. Join us next time for Intimacy Made Simple.